The whisper of mine had always been Aira's lullaby, a silent promise from a powerful alpha she adored. Tonight, under the ancient, gnarled branches of the moonwood tree, that lullaby felt closer than ever. Its leaves, silvered by moonlight, brushed her cheek like a tender caress. She smoothed her simple ceremonial dress, the soft fabric a familiar comfort, as she watched the pack's pups tumble in the clearing nearby. Her fingers, stained faintly green from the healing herbs she'd crushed for a feverish pup just moments before, trembled slightly. Soon after, a shadow fell over her. A scent, pine, rain, and raw power, filled the air. Kian, her Kian. He wasn't just the alpha, he was her protector, her confidant, her fated mate since they were children. To outsiders, he was the beast alpha, fierce and unyielding. Yet, to Aira, he was everything gentle, everything safe. His strong hand, calloused from countless battles, reached out. It brushed her cheekbone, then traced the curve of her jaw, lingering precisely where his mark would soon bloom. "Soon, little Omega," he rumbled, his voice a low vibration that resonated deep within her chest. His golden eyes, usually sharp and watchful, softened when they met hers. "Our bond will be complete. I swore to keep you safe and cherished above all others, and that vow, it stands eternal." He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "My Luna." Aira's heart swelled, so full it felt ready to burst. Joy, pure and unburdened, flowed through her. She believed him, absolutely, because his words were woven into the very fabric of their shared history. She closed her eyes, savoring the solid, real presence of him, the promise of forever. That night, she felt truly whole. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't imagine a world without Kian by her side. But then, a quiet hum, almost like a buzzing bee, snagged her attention. It was Alara, a pack elder, her face etched with concern. "Aira, my dear," Alara whispered. "The ceremony approaches. Are you truly well? There are whispers. Kian has been different, tense." Alara's gaze flickered towards the distant, imposing structure of the Alpha's den, then back to Aira, a question in her eyes that made Aira's serene anticipation falter, just for a beat. The great hall buzzed like a disturbed beehive, not with the usual festive energy, but a low, anxious murmur. Rory's heart, usually so light, felt a cold weight settle in her chest. Decorating for the mate ceremony, she hung vibrant banners, each one a stark contrast to the grim expressions on many faces. Just like that, the usual warmth of the hall felt strangely chill. From there, near a cluster of older warriors, she caught snippets of worried conversation. "The Alpha hasn't slept," one muttered, his voice rough. "Too many secret meetings with the Borders, and those obsidian claw delegates, they arrived so quickly." Another warrior sighed, running a hand through his grizzled fur. "Alpha Kian is strong, but even he seems burdened. This alliance, it feels forced, doesn't it?" Aira gripped the silky banner, her knuckles white. Burdened? Forced? No, it couldn't be. Kian was her rock. He always had a plan, because he was the Alpha, meant to lead them all. Her internal monologue, usually so certain, began to waver. She knew Kian was the beast Alpha to some, but he was always gentle with her. Perhaps they were just nervous. What's worse, their worried tones seemed to weave a web of doubt around her. Soon after, Kian strode through the hall, his presence a dark storm front. He didn't see her at first, his gaze distant, focused on the obsidian claw delegation, who stood rigid and unsmiling. Among them, a tall, fierce-looking warrior, Lyra, stood out. Lyra's eyes, like polished obsidian, held a cold, unwavering intensity. Yet, as if pulled by a string, Kian's gaze swept over the hall and, for a fleeting second, met Aira's. A tight, reassuring smile, barely there, touched his lips. It was enough. Just enough. Because of that, the cold weight in Aira's chest eased, replaced by a rush of familiar warmth. Her misbelief that he was hers, unwavering, stood firm. "See?" Aira murmured to herself, as if convincing the restless air. He's just busy. Alpha duties, that's all. But then, the Grand Herald's booming voice sliced through the nervous chatter, announcing the official commencement of the mate ceremony at dawn. Aira's heart skipped, not with full joy, but a beat later, with a mix of eager anticipation and a whisper of dread. The moment was almost here. The air itself felt heavy, thick with unspoken anticipation, as dawn painted the eastern sky in bruised purples and bruised oranges. Aira stood in the ceremonial bathing chamber, the warm, scented water clinging to her skin. Her hands trembled as she fastened the last pearl clasp on her ceremonial silks. They were softer than any fabric she had ever felt, a testament to the importance of this day. She tried to calm her racing pulse, because this was it. Her entire life, her destiny, had led to this very moment. In the stillness that followed, she walked through the throngs of her pack, their faces a sea of eager smiles and whispered blessings. The cheers, usually so comforting, now sounded muffled, distant, as if she were walking through water. Her heart pounded so loudly, she feared the entire pack could hear it. With every step she took, her dream of finally uniting with Kian, of becoming Luna, crystallized. But then, as she neared the raised dais, the sacred marking grounds, her steps faltered. Kian stood there, majestic and imposing, his silhouette outlined against the rising sun. But his gaze wasn't locked on her. It was fixed on something or someone just beyond her line of sight. As if pulled by a string, her head slowly turned. Lyra, the fierce warrior from the Obsidian Claw Pack, stood stoically among her delegation, her presence a cold spear in the festive air. Kian's unwavering stare was locked on her. Aira's breath caught. A chill, colder than any mountain wind, snaked through her veins. Her blood seemed to freeze in place, because this wasn't how it was supposed to be. Her stomach churned. A knot of terror tightened in her throat. Before she could move, before she could even process the agonizing sliver of dread, Kian finally shifted his gaze. His eyes, now devoid of all warmth, met hers. They were unreadable, a mask of cold duty. The cheers of the pack faded, dissolving into an uneasy silence that pressed down on Aira, suffocating her. Her dream, her promise, was teetering on the edge. The sacred mark, the very symbol of their eternal bond, felt like a burning question mark against her skin. Aira's world didn't just crack, it shattered. The air, once thick with sacred expectation, now vibrated with stunned silence, then erupted into a cacophony of whispers. Standing on the dais, barely inches from where Kian should have marked her, Aira watched, dazed as he turned. His back, once her shield, now became a wall, cold and impenetrable. Without warning, he strode past her, his powerful steps echoing the beat of a death knell in her heart. He walked straight to Lyra, the Obsidian Claw warrior. Lyra, whose eyes had held such cold intensity just moments before, now softened, just perceptibly. As the wind shifted, carrying their scents, Aira smelled not just Kian's familiar power, but Lyra's sharp, dominant scent mingling with his. What followed was a nightmare made real. Kian's hand, the same hand that had just traced the promise on her jaw, reached for Lyra's neck. A growl rose in Aira's throat, but it was swallowed by the collective gasp of the pack. With a powerful, decisive motion, Kian leaned in, sinking his teeth into Lyra's skin. The sharp scent of blood, the binding magic, filled the air. He marked her, publicly, irrevocably. He claimed her as Luna. A cold weight, heavier than any stone, settled in Aira's chest, crushing her lungs. Her mind screamed, "No!" He swore. But then, his voice, clear and unyielding, sliced through the shocked quiet. "This alliance," Kian declared, his voice devoid of emotion, "is for the good of my people, a necessary sacrifice for stability." Aira swayed, her vision blurring. Sacrifice? Her? She was not a sacrifice. She was a promise. The betrayal was visceral, a wound far deeper than any fang could inflict. She felt an agonizing internal snap, like a bone breaking deep inside her soul. Her immediate goal, simply, was to breathe, to understand how her world could have disintegrated in the span of a breath. Kian finally turned his head. His eyes met hers briefly, and in them, Aira saw only a flicker of torment, swiftly replaced by cold resolve. Before she could speak, before the words could leave her lips, Kian gestured to his guards. Their faces were grim. A pack elder, distraught, tried to protest, but Kian's eyes blazed with a terrifying, absolute authority, silencing all dissent. The sacred bond? It wasn't just broken, it was desecrated. And just like that, everything changed. Her body moved on instinct, but her mind was a raw, screaming void. Rough hands, belonging to warriors she'd known since she was a pup, seized Aira. Their grip was surprisingly gentle for captors, yet utterly inescapable. She didn't struggle, because a strange numbness had taken root inside her, a protective shroud over the agony. Her cries were choked, dissolving into ragged gasps as they dragged her from the sacred grounds. Her heart, once so full of light, now felt like shattered glass, each beat a fresh wound. As they led her away, her gaze snagged on Kian. He stood unmoving, a statue carved from duty and betrayal, still avoiding her eyes. Aira searched for any sign of the Kian she knew, the one who swore never to hurt her. She found only a cold, hard mask. Even so, the sheer indifference in his posture, the way he watched her go without a single flicker of remorse, twisted the knife deeper into her soul. Her immediate goal shifted from comprehending the betrayal to merely enduring this agonizing expulsion. Soon after, the familiar, comforting scent of the packlands, wood smoke, damp earth, wolf, began to thin, replaced by something wilder, colder. The warriors pushed her, not unkindly, but firmly, past the marked borders. The air grew sharp, alien. This was the desolate territories, a barren, dangerous wasteland pack children were warned about in cautionary tales. Here the trees were gnarled and starved, the ground cracked and unforgiving. She was left with nothing but the ceremonial silks she wore, now torn and snagged, and the profound, searing wound of Kian's betrayal. By the time the last warrior's back vanished into the encroaching twilight, Aira collapsed. Her body was spent, but her spirit felt utterly annihilated. She was alone. Truly alone. Her teeth chattered, not just from the biting wind that whipped her hair around her face, but from the shock. She instinctively curled into a tight ball, because the cold, hard ground seemed to mirror the cold, hard truth of her abandonment. Her goal now was survival, but her emotional state was dominated by shock, despair, and a raw, burning sense of injustice. What's worse, a guttural howl, long and mournful, echoed in the distance. It wasn't the welcoming howl of her pack. It was the hungry cry of the wild. The hunger was a dull, constant ache in her stomach, the cold gnawed at her bones. Days bled into nights, a blur of shivering and aching. Aira lay beneath a skeletal tree, her body weak, her mind drifting. She hallucinated, seeing shimmering visions in the distorted shadows. They weren't the faces of her pack, but wisps of women, ethereal and ancient, moving like smoke. They wore strange furs and carried staffs, their eyes luminous. As her pain reached its peak, a low hum started beneath the earth. It wasn't just in her ears, she felt it in her very bones, a vibration that resonated with something deep inside her. The air thickened around her, growing warm. Then, the whispers came. They weren't in the pack tongue, but a language that curled around her heart, instinctively understood, because it spoke of blood and lineage. Omega. Forgotten power. Pain is the key. Not only that, but an image pulsed behind her eyelids, vibrant and clear, an intricate swirling rune like a mark of forgotten ancestry. It pulsed with light. Suddenly, a raw, untamed magic surged through her, hotter than any fever. It wasn't the agonizing heat of her pain. It was a boundless, primal force, thrilling and terrifying all at once. Her internal monologue, usually so focused on Kian, was now consumed by this overwhelming energy. Her bones remembered him, but her soul was remembering something else. Still, she didn't know what scared her more, the complete helplessness she'd felt, or this untamed power now thrumming beneath her skin. This wasn't just strength. It was a force capable of twisting fate itself. Her new immediate goal was to understand it, to control it. She reached out a trembling hand, her eyes now gleaming with a faint, unusual light. As if summoned, a small, jagged rock nearby shivered. It lifted, slowly, wobbling in the air, then dropped with a soft thud. In that moment, Aira knew she wouldn't die here. She couldn't. This power was a gift, a terrifying response to the betrayal that had nearly claimed her. It was a promise. Because of that, her transformation, born from shattered trust, was truly beginning. The whispers faded, but the energy remained, a burning ember deep within her. The desolate territories, once a grave, were becoming her crucible. Weeks bled into months in the desolate territories. The once gentle Omega Aira was now gaunt, her skin weathered by sun and wind, yet a fierce, unyielding light blazed in her eyes. The raw, untamed magic she'd discovered pulsed beneath her skin, a constant, humming companion. Her immediate goal was simply to survive, to tame this wild power before it consumed her. She learned to read the land, to find hidden springs where no water should be, because the earth itself seemed to whisper its secrets to her now. She practiced constantly, her movements awkward at first. Sometimes, nothing happened. Other times, a sudden burst of energy would send a shower of pebbles scattering, or make a distant rock vibrate with unseen force. She was a student of the wild, and the wild was a harsh teacher. One blistering afternoon, she stumbled upon a lone, elderly wanderer, a shaman-like figure with eyes like ancient coals. He wasn't a wolf, but something else entirely, a being of the old ways. He didn't approach directly. Instead, he observed her from a distance, then left a small offering of dried berries and a carved bone. When Aira found him again, he merely pointed to a withered patch of earth, a subtle plea in his gaze. Without a word, Aira extended her hand, a faint glow emanating from her palm. The earth beneath her fingers softened, a trickle of clear water bubbling to the surface. The wanderer watched, his ancient eyes widening with a knowing wisdom. The bond, it calls for truth, he rasped, his voice like rustling leaves. Broken oaths fester, little one. The sickness spreads beyond your pack, a rot touching all connected lands. He spoke of unseen consequences, of a blight upon the very essence of the world, because sacred vows were not easily shattered without cost. His words weren't a direct teaching, but they resonated with the deep-seated anger and emerging purpose within Aira. They were hints, like fragments of an old, forgotten song. As the wind shifted, the wanderer melted back into the harsh landscape, leaving Aira with a renewed sense of urgency. The blight wasn't just Kian's problem. It was a ripple effect, a warning. Her adaptation to this new, desolate reality was complete. Aira's power, though still wild, was growing. It felt like an extension of her own will, humming with a primal energy that made her blood sing. One day, drawn by the distant sound of frantic cries, she discovered a small, isolated group of human travelers trapped by a sudden rock slide. Giant boulders, sharp as teeth, had cascaded down, blocking their path and threatening to crush their makeshift camp. Panic was a tangible thing in the air. Without thinking, her body moved on instinct. She wasn't the meek Omega anymore. Her hands rose, and the ancient rune pulsed faintly on her skin. A low hum vibrated in the air around her, a song of pure force. She focused, channeling the raw energy, pushing it towards the towering pile of rock. The ground trembled. Dust billowed. What followed was a deafening groan as the largest boulders impossibly shifted, rolling away from the trapped travelers, carving a narrow, safe passage. The effort left her trembling, a cold sweat beating on her brow, but a surge of cautious triumph filled her. She had saved them. Not Kian, not her old pack, but her. This wasn't just strength. It was purpose. The travelers stared, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. One, a young woman, slowly reached out a hand, then quickly drew it back. What are you?" she whispered, her voice laced with trepidation. Aira saw the fear in their eyes, a stark reminder that her power, while miraculous, was also alien, potentially terrifying. She was no longer just the gentle Omega. She was something more, something unknown. Instead, Aira simply turned. She walked away, her steps firm, towards the distant, troubled skies above what would be Crimson Moon territory. Her initial successes here in the desolate territories solidified her resolve. The small victories fueled her, telling her that this new power could not only protect but change. The faint, sickly aura of the blighted lands seemed to call to her, a direct challenge she now felt ready to answer. Aira felt an inexplicable pull, like an invisible string tugging her towards the familiar yet now unsettling scent of home. She ventured closer to the Crimson Moon Pack borders, hiding in the deep shadows of the ancient trees. The air, inside the boundary, felt different. Heavy, stale, not the vibrant hum of a healthy pack, but a sickly thrum, like a fevered pulse. Soon after, a patrol of Kian's warriors stumbled into view. Their usually strong, confident strides were sluggish. Their fur, once sleek, was matted and dull. Their faces were drawn, eyes tired, and worry lines carved deep around their mouths. She felt it, clear as day, the pervasive weakness emanating from them. "The Alpha's curse," one rasped, coughing harshly, his voice hoarse. "It's spreading, Torin. More pups are falling ill. Even the older ones. They don't recover." "It's because of the outsider Luna," Torin muttered, his voice low and bitter. "The bond was broken. The old ones said it would bring ruin." As if to punctuate his words, he stumbled, collapsing to his knees, his body racked with tremors. His skin was unnaturally pale. Aira watched, her heart a tangled knot of conflicting emotions. Pity, sharp and unexpected, twisted within her because these were her pack, her family once. But beneath it, a grim satisfaction pulsed. This was the cost. This was the justice, unfolding. In the quiet that followed, she saw Kian, distant and tormented, during a short, tense council meeting she observed from afar. His posture was slumped, his movements stiff. The mighty Alpha, once so imposing, seemed diminished, a ghost of his former self. His head was bowed as if bearing an unbearable weight. He looked haunted, because the unseen consequences of his broken vow were visibly consuming him, just as the sickness was consuming his pack. Her internal monologue hummed with purpose. The suffering was real. The torment was visible. Her return wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was an undeniable necessity. The question wasn't if she would return, but how she would make him understand. The air thickened, almost humming with the low thrum of Aira's growing power. Driven by the sight of her once vibrant pack wasting away, Aira began her silent war, her unseen intervention. She didn't burst through the gates. Instead, she moved like a ghost along the Crimson Moon Pack's blighted borders. Her presence, a whisper of ancient magic, was barely perceptible, yet profoundly effective. She found a creek, choked with murky water and sickly moss, its banks lined with withered plants. With a single glance, her unique Omega power surged. Her hands, raised as if in prayer, glowed faintly. The water cleared, impossibly, becoming crystal pure, because the forgotten bloodlines had always been connected to the very essence of life. As a result, the blighted moss receded, replaced by vibrant green. This small miracle created a pocket of thriving life, starkly contrasting with the decay within the packlands. Soon after, a group of lower-ranked outcast pack members, desperate for clean water and untainted herbs, ventured to these very borders. They didn't see Aira, but they saw the clear water. They saw the blossoming life. Their eyes widened with disbelief, then dawning hope. Whispers began to ripple through their ranks. An ancient blessing. a spirit of the wild. Not only that, but tales of an Omega Guardian returning to the territories began to spread, faint but persistent like smoke signals in the wind. These stories bypassed Kian's loyal inner circle, spreading among the most vulnerable because they were the ones most desperate for a miracle. Meanwhile, back in the Alpha's den, Kian received fragmented reports. Strange pockets of health Alpha, unexplained. He dismissed them as anomalies, but a tremor of unease, a cold knot of apprehension, began to tighten in his gut. His tormented thoughts spun, consumed by the pack's accelerating decline. Aira's unseen actions were creating fissures in his strained control, raising the pressure on him. The connection pulsed between them, a strange psychic tether forged by their shared shattered past. Aira, now stronger in her power than ever, found a quiet place near a stream where the water mirrored the twilight sky. She closed her eyes, focusing, reaching out. Her wolf pressed forward, instinctively seeking the truth. What followed was a direct window into Kian's tormented soul. She saw him in his chambers, not the stoic Alpha, but a man ravaged by guilt. His face was drawn, his movements jerky. Nightmares, vivid and chilling, consumed him. He thrashed, murmuring her name, Aira, a desperate plea torn from his very being. His body was also ravaged. Dark veins pulsed under his skin, mirroring the blighted land, a cruel manifestation of the curse his broken vow had unleashed. His voice trembled, thick with despair. I had no choice. For the good of my people. Prevent war. She saw the truth of it then. Not an excuse, but a desperate, misguided act. A vision flashed. Kian, young and desperate, facing rival Alpha threats, making a deal, marking Lyra, to save his pack from utter annihilation. It was a brutal, pragmatic choice, but it had come at a soul-destroying price. The truth unraveled before her. He was tormented. He suffered. In that moment, something inside her shifted. The vengeful fury, once a raging fire, cooled into a sharp, clear resolve. This wasn't about simply making him pay. This was about justice. Not just for her, but for the sacred bond itself, for his pack, for him. Her purpose deepened. This was a cosmic debt, and Kian, broken as he was still the key to its balance. Her goal was no longer just to punish, but to force him to confront, truly confront, the consequences of his decision. The game had changed. Her purpose was a burning star in her chest. The anger, once a hot flame, was now a cold, precise steel. Aira, cloaked in shadows woven from her Omega magic, crossed the now weakened Crimson Moon Pack border. The moment her foot touched the blighted soil, a ripple went through the very earth, a low tremor that vibrated through the ground. As her wolf stirred, an unsettling ripple spread through the pack's weakened communal sense. Animals instinctively recoiled from her presence, whickering nervously. Sick pack members lying in their dens felt a strange jolt, some of terror, others, a fleeting, desperate spark of hope they couldn't name. Her presence alone was a force of nature, an unspoken prophecy. She didn't seek out Kian immediately. Instead, she walked directly to the pack's central spring, once a source of pure, life-giving water, now a putrid, festering pool. Its stench hung heavy in the air, a physical manifestation of the pack's decay. Without another word, Aira extended her hands over the corrupted water. Her ancient rune pulsed, bright and undeniable on her skin. A shimmering silver light erupted from her palms, flowing into the dark water. The stench vanished. The black sludge dissolved. The spring cleared, bubbling with newfound vitality, pure as fresh rain. It was a tangible, undeniable act of power. By the time the cleansing was complete, the air itself felt cleaner, lighter. A lone pack warrior scouting near the spring stumbled upon the scene. His eyes, already wide with sickness, grew even wider with terror and disbelief. He saw the pure water. He saw the faint, ethereal glow still lingering around the Omega woman. His mind, reeling, could only register one thing: a miracle or a curse. He turned and raced back, his every ragged breath filled with a single desperate need to alert Kian. He didn't know who had returned, but Kian would. The news of the cleansed spring, of the mysterious pockets of healing, swept through the Crimson Moon pack like wildfire, not with joyous celebration, but with a deep, unsettling unease. The pack members, especially the sick and the disillusioned, whispered her name, or rather the name the fearful gave her, the Shadow Healer. Their hope was a dangerous thing, a silent rebellion against Kian's weakening rule. Aira, cloaked in the shadows of her power, continued her subtle disruptions. She would appear near blighted hunting grounds, revitalizing them with a silent surge of energy because the land responded to her. Then she would vanish before anyone could truly see her. These visible evidences of her power directly contradicted the Alpha's declining influence, leaving Kian's warriors baffled and his authority increasingly questioned. More importantly, a few of the oldest pack members, those who remembered the ancient tales of forgotten Omega magic, saw the signs. Their eyes, once dull with despair, now held a glint of recognition, a dangerous spark of hope that could ignite chaos. "It's the old ways returning," an elder rasped to a small group, his voice barely a whisper. "A true Omega, not merely one who follows." This open loop, these whispers of old ways, kept the pack guessing, building suspense about Aira's true identity and power. Meanwhile, the pressure built on Kian. He paced his den like a caged beast, his jaw clenched. His golden eyes, usually so commanding, were clouded with frustration. He felt the shift in the pack's mood, a subtle undercurrent of defiance. He sensed a growing power, an adversary. He didn't know who it was, but he knew it was coming for him, because the pack's decay deepened with every passing day. Soon after, Kian's frustration boiled over. He pounded his fist on a map of their territory. "Find it!" he snarled at his beta, his voice laced with desperation. "Find whatever is causing this interference." His rage, however, only fueled Aira's chilling resolve. She was pushing him, strategically, inevitably, towards a direct confrontation, forcing him to acknowledge her power step by step. Kian's desperation had reached a fever pitch. The strange pockets of healing, the rampant whispers, the worsening coughs from the dens, it was all unraveling his authority. So, he set a trap, a deliberate, calculated snare. He announced a vital hunting expedition into the deepest, most blighted part of the territory, knowing it would draw any unseen force seeking to cleanse or interfere. The bait. A small, vulnerable group of young, sickly pups placed just within the blighted zone because he knew whatever this power was, it seemed to offer salvation. Aira felt the shift in the air, a subtle, predatory tension. She knew it was a trap, but instead of avoiding it, she walked directly into it. Her purpose was clear, to demonstrate the futility of his efforts, the superiority of her power. She moved through the shadows of the blighted trees, a silent, formidable presence. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, the air thickened with her magic. Kian and his hidden guards lay in wait, their senses strained. Suddenly, an ethereal mist rose from the blighted ground, swirling around the pups, concealing them. Kian's own defensive magic, which he'd woven around the area, began to falter, its intricate patterns twisting and breaking as if pulled by an invisible string. His trap, meant to ensnare, was now backfiring. Then Aira materialized, not fully visible, but a shimmering silhouette radiating raw Omega power. She didn't touch the pups. Instead, she unleashed a wave of cleansing energy that swept through the blighted zone, pushing back the decay, leaving behind a clear, undeniable sign of her unique power. The ancient Omega rune, the one from her vision, burned into the surface of a large, flat stone directly in front of Kian's hidden position. It glowed with a faint silver light. Kian stared at the symbol, his heart skipping. A beat later, a look of profound recognition, then dawning horror, spread across his face. He knew that mark. It was ancient, forbidden, and belonged only to one. His voice, A strangled rasp broke the silence. Aira. The space between them burned with the weight of that name, the impossible truth of her return. The moment Kian's strangled whisper of Aira hung in the air, a different kind of storm erupted. Lyra, the warrior he'd marked, stormed into his chambers, her face contorted with a fury that mirrored Kian's own despair. She didn't bother with courtesies. "The pack is dying, Kian, and your grand alliance, it's rotting us from within." Her voice was sharp, edged with accusation. She threw a small, intricately carved wooden wolf at his feet. "My Alpha sends this. His pack suffers from your broken oaths. Our alliance built on deceit is tainted. We are both being consumed by your folly." Her declaration was a stark reminder of the broader cost of his betrayal. Lyra's honesty, for once, was a shocking contrast to Kian's previous justifications. This was an open loop, the good of his people now exposed as a lie that harmed both packs. Kian, utterly cornered, stumbled back. The Alpha's mask shattered, revealing the raw, tormented man beneath. He dropped to his knees, his shoulders shaking. "It was a desperate choice," he rasped, his voice thick with guilt. "A war was coming. My pack would have been annihilated without Lyra's forces. I believed I had to choose the pack's survival over everything." He buried his face in his hands. "Camilla, Aira, I broke everything." The mention of Camilla, the marked warrior's name, was a subtle plot twist for the audience, suggesting another layer of burden on Kian. Aira, hidden in the deep shadows just outside his chambers, absorbed every word. Each confession, each raw admission of guilt, validated her path. She felt it, clear as day. This wasn't just Kian's personal torment, it was the ripple effect of his broken vow, a cancerous growth on the very fabric of their world. Her heart ached, but not from pain, from the truth. This was the justice she sought. As Lyra, her fury spent, stormed away, leaving Kian a broken figure, Aira stepped out of the shadows. Her presence was a silent, powerful judgment. Kian, sensing her, looked up, his face pale, his eyes wide. The moment their eyes locked, the air thickened. He saw her not just as the Omega he had exiled, but as the transformed force of consequences. There was no turning back for either of them. All right, Aira has revealed herself, and Kian has acknowledged his guilt. Now, in Act 6, we delve into the darkest period where Kian's desperate attempts to fix things backfire dramatically, leading to the lowest point for Aira and seemingly for the entire pack. I'll focus on amplifying the emotional despair and sense of loss. Here is the continuation of Act 6 for the Omega's vengeance, marked by betrayal. Kian, utterly broken by Aira's return and the irrefutable evidence of his pack's decline, was a desperate beast. He knew who she was now, knew the power she wielded. Instead of confronting her directly, however, he lashed out. He rallied his remaining loyalists, his voice hoarse, painting a picture of an ancient curse, a blight brought by vengeful spirits, a twisted story that excluded Aira's true identity because he couldn't bear to admit his own monstrous mistake to the wider pack. He ordered a grand ritual, a desperate act of brute alpha force meant to purify the lands and bind the pack's weakened essence back together. He sacrificed precious resources, drained the last of his own spiritual energy, all in a frantic attempt to reassert control and mend the deep fissures. The air thickened with his raw, desperate magic, thick and suffocating. What followed was a catastrophe. His ritual didn't purify. It accelerated the decay. The blight intensified with terrifying speed. Within hours, more pack members collapsed, their fevers spiking, their breaths ragged. Aira, watching from a hidden vantage point, felt their suffering resonate within her. Her chest ached. The sacred moonwood tree, the very heart of the pack's spiritual connection, began to visibly wither, its ancient leaves curling into brittle husks, its bark cracking like sun-scorched earth. It was a dying gasp, a direct consequence of Kian's broken bond, and his flawed attempt at fixing it only made things worse. Her initial grim satisfaction at Kian's torment twisted into a horrifying despair. This wasn't justice. This was rampant destruction. Because of that, the sight of the beloved Moonwood dying, the sound of the children's fevered cries echoing from the dens, sent a shockwave through her. A major setback had just hit. Aira now saw that Kian's desperate actions were causing even more suffering for the innocent. What's worse, his desperation was amplifying the curse. Aira rushed forward, her every instinct screaming to intervene. The small child she had seen earlier, the one with the bright, curious eyes, now lay struggling for breath in a communal den, his small body burning with fever. His mother wept silently beside him, her face etched with despair. Aira knelt, her unique Omega power flaring, a desperate surge of healing light. She reached out, channeling her ancestral magic into the boy. But instead of the swift relief she expected, a searing pain shot through her arm. Her power, while formidable, had a limit, a terrible price. It was as if the curse from the broken bond was too deeply entrenched, too vast for her to fully reverse on her own, without Kian's genuine cooperation, his true atonement. Her efforts drained her, leaving her weakened, trembling, and utterly frustrated. She could only offer a momentary respite, a cooling of the fever, but the underlying blight persisted, a stubborn, insidious poison. Still, the pack members who witnessed her act, those few desperate souls who had dared to trust the whispers of the shadow healer, stared at her with a mix of awe and profound fear. Their eyes, wide and bewildered, showed that they feared her power, its unknown origins, as much as they feared their illness. They didn't understand. She wasn't their enemy. She was trying to save them. Deep down, she knew the truth. Her strength alone wasn't enough. A growl rose in her throat, one of pure, agonizing frustration. She retreated, her head bowed, feeling utterly defeated. The magnitude of the broken bond, its far-reaching consequences, pressed down on her. The sacred promise, once so simple, had become a monstrous, complex wound that defied even her ancient magic. Her goal was to alleviate suffering, but she was failing. It was her own lowest point approaching. She found herself almost unconsciously drawn to a desolate, sacred place she once shared with Kian. It was a hidden spring, nestled deep in the Moonwood, where they had exchanged their earliest, most innocent vows. Now the spring was stagnant, choked with black slime, its once vibrant greenery withered to a skeletal gray. As the silence stretched, Aira collapsed beside it, her body racked with a deeper exhaustion than any physical exertion could cause. Visions flooded her mind, swirling like dark currents. Kian's face, cold and resolute as he marked Lyra, the cheers of the pack, now mocking echoes, her own broken cries as she was dragged away. Then images of her past self, the meek Omega, clinging to Kian's promise, trusting blindly. Her heart skipped. Had she merely exchanged one form of meekness for another, albeit a powerful one? Was she, in her quest for justice, merely destroying what little hope remained, like a vengeful storm leaving only desolation in its wake? Her core misbelief resurfaced, twisted. She questioned if her identity, even her power, was still tied to him and the pain he inflicted. Maybe it was fate, that some bonds were beyond repair. The goal seemed impossible. A growl rose in her throat again, but this time it was directed at herself, at the overwhelming futility. She didn't know what scared her more, the possibility that she couldn't fix this, or the dawning realization that she might not want to fix it, if it meant going back to being dependent. This was her all-is-lost moment, a crucible where her entire being was tested. In the quiet that followed, she stared into the stagnant water, seeing her own reflection distorted by the slime. Her face, once soft, was now sharp, fierce, almost wild. Was this the monster Kian had created, or the warrior she was meant to be? A faint spark, however, flickered deep within her, a stubborn ember of resolve. No matter how hard she tried to extinguish it, it remained. True healing, she realized, wouldn't come from forcing Kian to suffer, but from forcing him to face the truth, to choose atonement. This was her final, desperate clarity. The stagnant water of the sacred spring reflected Aira's newly forged resolve. Her body remembered the ache, the despair, but her soul now hummed with a different kind of power. It wasn't just rage anymore. It was a cold, pure determination. She'd glimpsed Kian's torment, witnessed the widespread suffering of the pack, and understood the true, devastating cost of a broken sacred bond. Her goal had sharpened. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, about forcing Kian to confront the profound consequences of his actions, not just for her, but for everyone, including himself. As the wind shifted, carrying the faint, sickly scent of the blighted packlands, a forgotten memory surfaced. It was a fragment from the old wanderer's cryptic words, mixed with an ancestral whisper she'd instinctively understood during her exile. An ancient ritual, a way to bind two fated souls, not in union, but in reckoning. This wasn't a physical battle, it was a spiritual one, because it would force Kian to experience the full weight of his betrayal directly. The goal, not to destroy, but to force atonement. Just like that, everything changed. Her transformation from a meek Omega to a force of nature was now complete. She was the Omega Guardian, the keeper of the forgotten balance. She knew Kian wouldn't come willingly, because his pride, however shattered, was still a formidable barrier. She would have to bring the truth to him. The clarity was liberating, a renewed hope burning brightly within her. Her purpose, now forged in fire, propelled her forward. She began to gather specific, ancient components for the ritual. Herbs that only grew in moon-kissed clearings, stones from the deepest, most untouched caves, and sacred waters untouched by the blight. Her movements were precise, deliberate, each step a testament to her unwavering focus. The rumors of the shadow healer had intensified. Not only that, but the worsening blight and Kian's increasingly desperate failed attempts to stem the decay pushed several influential pack members to their breaking point. These were the disillusioned, elders who remembered the true teachings, warriors who had lost loved ones to the mysterious illness. They were desperate, looking for any sign of hope, because Kian's leadership was crumbling. One night, drawn by a primal instinct, a small group of these desperate souls found Aira near a hidden spring she had begun to cleanse. She revealed herself, pulling back the hood of her cloak. The moment their eyes locked, shock, then awe, then a terrifying hope flashed across their faces. It was Aira, the exiled Omega, transformed. As the silence stretched, Aira spoke, her voice clear and resonant, no longer timid. She explained the ritual, the true nature of the broken bond, how it was poisoning the pack from within. She didn't seek revenge, she sought balance. She sought justice. She told them Kian must face the truth, truly accept his responsibility, or the pack would surely perish. They listened, their initial fear giving way to a desperate, awestruck understanding. Lyra, the marked warrior, also appeared, drawn by the profound shift in the pack's aura. Her face was grim, her posture weary. "His betrayal curses us all," Lyra rasped, her eyes meeting Aira's. "I will not stand in the way of what must be done." She offered a path for Aira to reach Kian undetected, through secret passages known only to the Alpha's inner circle. Soon after, a plan began to form. These unlikely allies, driven by the survival of their pack, agreed to help. They would create a diversion, drawing Kian's remaining loyalists away from the Alpha's den, allowing Aira and a select few access. With every heartbeat, Aira felt the final confrontation drawing closer. The emotional investment of these allies deepened her resolve. Aira moved through the blighted, silent pack grounds like a phantom, her small group of allies trailing behind her like shadows. The air was thick with tension, palpable enough to taste. The once bustling village was eerily quiet, save for the muffled coughs from within the dens. a constant reminder of the pervasive sickness. The moonwood tree, its branches skeletal against the sky, loomed overhead, a silent sentinel witnessing the coming reckoning. They encountered scattered, weakened patrols. These warriors, already sickly and disheartened, were easily subdued. Aira used her power, not for violence, but with chilling precision. She'd create fleeting illusions, a sudden blinding mist, a disorienting tremor of the earth, or even a whisper of an ancient, terrifying presence in their minds. As a result, the warriors stumbled, confused, giving Aira and her small party unchallenged passage deeper into the Alpha's territory. Meanwhile, within his formidable keep, Kian felt it. The subtle tremors of magic growing stronger, the unnatural quiet from his usual patrols. His torment, a constant companion, intensified into a suffocating dread. He knew. Deep down, he knew the truth. She was here. His Aira. Not the gentle Omega he'd cast aside, but the formidable, inescapable consequence of his broken vow. His breath caught, ragged in his throat. With every step he took, Aira felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. She was no longer just the wronged woman. She was the embodiment of the sacred bond's truth. The path led directly to Kian's personal chambers, or perhaps the very center of the sacred grounds where their mark was meant to be. As the sky darkened, casting long, ominous shadows, Aira reached the threshold. Kian was there, a broken figure, looking up, his golden eyes wide with a terrifying mix of terror and understanding. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the quiet power of her resolve. The ultimate reckoning was at hand. Got it. This is the final act, the culmination of all the tension, betrayal, and transformation. I will focus on a powerful climax, a poignant falling action, and a satisfying, albeit complex resolution that fulfills Aira's arc. I'll maintain all the specified requirements for emotional depth, pacing, and vivid description, along with the formatting and stylistic rules. Here is the conclusion. Act 8 for the Omega's vengeance, marked by betrayal. The air crackled with a raw ancient power, vibrating with the weight of centuries-old vows. Aira stood before Kian, not in his chambers, but in the heart of the blighted Moonwood Grove, the very place they had exchanged their earliest, most innocent promises. Its skeletal branches loomed above them, silent, mournful witnesses. Kian, a broken shadow of his former alpha self, looked up at her, his golden eyes filled with a terrifying mix of terror and understanding. His heart skipped. Without another word, Aira began the ancient ritual. Her hands rose, the intricate Omega rune pulsing on her skin, radiating a silver-blue light that pushed back the suffocating decay of the grove. She didn't attack him physically. Instead, she unleashed her forbidden Omega power, twisting fate itself. She forced him to feel, to relive every agonizing moment of his betrayal. She didn't just show him, she plunged him into it. He saw himself on the dais, turning away, the desperate glint in Lyra's eyes as he marked her. He felt the cold shock of Aira's heart shattering. He experienced the desolation of her exile, the gnawing hunger, the freezing nights, the profound loneliness, amplified 1,000-fold. The invisible mark he had left on her soul now burned him from within. His body writhed, guttural cries torn from his throat, not of physical pain, but of a soul-deep agony. He was forced to confront his justifications, seeing them as the fragile, self-serving lies they truly were, because the sacred bond demanded absolute truth. He saw the suffering of his pack, the withered land, all directly linked to his selfish act. The climax wasn't a fight of fangs and claws, but of truth against denial. The central question, can a broken sacred bond ever truly heal, hung heavy in the air. Kian, overwhelmed, finally broke. Not his body, but his will. With a pained gasp, he reached out, not for defense, but for atonement. "I understand," he choked out, tears streaming down his face, his voice raw with a profound, terrifying acceptance. "I broke it, and the cost? The cost is everything." In that moment, his genuine acknowledgement, his raw surrender to the truth, resonated with Aira's power. The ritual pulsed one last time, not with destructive force, but with a wave of cleansing energy. The blight on the moonwood began to recede, a faint green blush returning to the barren earth, because a step towards balance had been taken. Aira stood over Kian, exhausted but resolute as the ritual faded into silence. Kian lay on the damp earth, physically and emotionally spent, but with a weary clarity in his eyes. His gaze, no longer haunted, met hers, filled with a deep, wordless understanding. There was no apology. It wasn't needed. The ritual had been the apology, the atonement. What followed was a subtle but undeniable shift across the Crimson Moonpack lands. The mysterious illnesses which had plagued them for so long began to recede, like a tide pulling back from the shore. The sick pups began to stir, their whimpers softening into contented purrs. The air, once heavy with decay, now carried a faint, fresh scent of pine and damp earth. Soon after, Kian, though still weak, rose. His first act as a truly repentant alpha was to call a full pack meeting. His voice, though hoarse, resonated with newfound honesty. He didn't offer excuses. He spoke of his arrogance, his misguided choices, and the immense suffering he had brought upon them all. He named Aira, not as his intended Luna, but as the Omega Guardian, the one who had forced him to face the truth. He promised genuine efforts to mend the internal strife, to rebuild the trust he had shattered. There was backlash, anger from some, but also surprising support from those who had felt the cleansing energies, those who had witnessed his profound internal change. Lyra, the warrior he had marked, approached him, her face grim but her eyes holding a new respect. "The taint between our packs lessens," she stated, her voice gruff. "Perhaps now, a true alliance built on honesty can begin." Her words confirmed the ritual's far-reaching impact. Kian, for the first time in years, truly looked at her, not as a symbol of a failed alliance, but as another victim of his folly. Months melted into seasons. The Crimson Moonpack slowly, painstakingly healed. Under Kian's new, humbled leadership, their numbers grew stronger, their spirits lighter. The Moonwood Grove, once a symbol of blight, now thrived, its leaves shimmering silver-green once more, a living testament to the raw truth that had been faced. Aira, however, did not stay as Luna. She had transcended that role. She was no longer bound by old expectations, no longer defined by Kian's initial rejection. She had found her worth not in a mate but in her own ancient power and purpose, becoming a revered, almost mythical figure, the Omega Guardian. She roamed the territories, a force of balance, occasionally intervening when sacred bonds were threatened, or offering cryptic guidance to those seeking truth and wisdom in the forgotten ways. Her power was no longer fueled by pain, but by a quiet, fierce purpose. She and Kian shared a profound, complex connection now, forged in shared trauma and eventual justice. It wasn't the fated mate bond of old, but something deeper, perhaps stronger, a bond of mutual respect, understanding, and the shared burden of keeping the balance. He would seek her counsel on rare occasions, their conversations brief, heavy with unspoken history, yet filled with a unique understanding no one else could share. In the stillness that followed, Aira found profound peace. She had not sought revenge, but justice, and in doing so, she had found herself. Her world tilted, not from betrayal, but from the weight of her own power. She stood, not as an Omega waiting for an Alpha's mark, but as a guardian of destiny forever changed. The final scene impression was one of a powerful, self-realized guardian, truly free. Epilogue. The Crimson Moonpack thrived. Children, healthy and boisterous, played beneath the moonwood tree, told stories not of a beast alpha, but of a humbled leader and the powerful Omega Guardian who helped him restore balance. Aira, a serene yet formidable presence, was seen in distant lands, perhaps in ancient groves, guiding other Omegas to awaken their dormant powers, teaching them that true strength came from within, from their ancestral blood, and that no one's worth was defined by another's rejection. The land flourished under her subtle watch, a testament to the enduring power of truth, healing, and the sacredness of bonds, even those that had to be broken to be truly understood.